Hi, I'm John Stevenson. We're going to be looking at Hebrews chapter 1. We started it last time, but we're going to look through Hebrews chapter 1 in our continuing study of the general epistles. We started off back in verse 1 where God is introduced, who has spoken in times past many different ways through the fathers to the prophets. But now he has spoken to us in his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, through whom also he made the world. And we go on to read in verse 3, and he is the radiance of his glory, speaking of Jesus, and the exact representation of his nature, and upholds all things by the word of his power. When he had made purification of sins, that's going to be a big idea in the book of Hebrews, so we're not going to go into a lot of detail right now. When he had made purifications of sins, that's what Jesus did on the cross, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. But notice we're not finished with the sentence yet. Having become as much better than the angels, he has inherited a more excellent name than they. Who has he inherited a more excellent name than? It was the angels. And that's going to be the subject of Hebrews chapter 1. Not just that we're going to talk about angels, but that we're going to see that Jesus is better than the angels. Notice, as having become much better than the angels. Why? Because he has inherited a more excellent name than they have. Angels have a big name, a big reputation. After all, there's God and then there's the angels. But Jesus is going to be seen here as better than the angels. So we see in verse 5, for to which of the angels did he ever say, angels are a big deal, especially among Jewish people, I suppose, in anybody's eyes. But to which of the angels did he ever say, you are my son? There's angels, and then there's the son. There's a bunch of angels, there's one son. And to which of the angels did he ever say, you are my son, today I have begotten you, and again I will be a father to him, and he will be a son to me. In fact, the idea of begetting anybody, that's how you get a son, you beget a son. And God said that about Jesus. And what he's doing here, he's not just citing something that God said back in the Gospels, he's citing something that God had said way back in the Old Testament. And again, the Old Testament had said, I will be a father to him, and he will be a son to me. And when he again brings the firstborn into the world, firstborn, that's the child, in this case the son, he says, let all the angels of God worship him. That is, angels, as great as they were, they existed to worship the Son. And when he brought his firstborn into the world, remember, the firstborn got all the privileges because the firstborn's job was to take care of everyone else, and the firstborn did this. Jesus did that. And it was said of Jesus, let all the angels of God worship him. And of the angels, he says, on the one hand, he says those things about the Son. Of the angels, he says, who makes his angels winds and his ministers a flame of fire. Now, just a small note there, where it says in verse 7, who makes his angels winds. The word winds, plural, the pneumoi, can also be translated. The same word also means who makes his angels spirits. So is it winds or is it spirits? Take your choice. And his ministers a flame of fire. That's a wonderful thing. But the Son is better, because the angels were to worship the Son, not the other way around. In verse 8, but of the Son, he says, we just talked about the angels, but by contrast of the Son, he says, your throne, O God, is forever and ever. Did you catch that? Of the Son, he says, your throne, O God, is forever and ever. Did you catch that? That the Son is being addressed and is referred to as God. Your throne, O God, is forever and ever, and the righteous scepter is the scepter of his kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated lawlessness. Therefore, your God, the Son has a God? Well, yes, the Father. Your God has anointed you. That's why he's the anointed one. We refer to that as Messiah. Therefore, your God has anointed you with the oil of gladness above your companions. Verse 10, and you, Lord, in the beginning laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of your hands. It's still speaking of the Son. Remember, we already started off in the first few verses how it was the Son who created all things, who brought all things into existence. And you, O Lord, in the beginning laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. They will become old like a garment, and like a garment you will roll them up. Like a garment they will also be changed. But you are the same, and your years will not come to an end. And he's using these Old Testament passages, because this is all quoted from the Old Testament. He's quoting those to refer to Jesus, the Son. Now, in context, back in the Old Testament, this all pointed to God. But Jesus is being described in God terms. It continues, verse 13, but to which of the angels has he ever said, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet? Quotation from Psalm 110, verse 1, where David, writing the psalm, has said, the Lord said to my Lord. And you say, wait a second, how can David have a Lord that's not the Lord? Well, that's because even though he's speaking of one who would be a son, that person is also David's Lord. The Lord said to my Lord, sit here at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. He didn't say that about angels. He said that about the Son of David, but also the Son of God. And now he asks the question, are they, that is the angels, are they not all ministering spirits sent out to render service for the sake of those who will inherit salvation? Angels are ministering spirits. Angels are there to serve, but they are sent out to serve those who will inherit salvation. They are sent out to serve you who inherit salvation. The angels are servants, but the Son, his place is to rule. Have you come to that place of salvation? Have you come to that place of one who will be the beneficiary of the ministry of the angels? Have you come to him in faith?